Hello friends, the 614th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The main attention is still focused on Avdiivka. The weather has slowed the pace of fighting in recent days, but is now improving, meaning ground assaults will soon resume. The main intensity of the fighting is in the area of the Avdiivka coke plant. Apparently, this is the main target of Russian attacks in the northern part of the city, on which, in fact, the entire defense of the Ukrainian army in Avdiivka relies. The American Institute for the Study of War also writes that the Russians are preparing to attack the Avdiivka coke plant. Analysts report that the Russians have assembled a significant force around the city. This is confirmed by the Ukrainian armed forces. The speaker of the Tavrida group, Shtupun, says the Russians have concentrated 14,000 personnel in this direction and the transferring additional forces. The General Staff today reports 10 enemy attacks repulsed in the area of Opetne, Pervomayske and Avdiivka itself. The Ukrainian telegram channel Deep State reports that the Russians are also attacking Avdiivka head-on near Spartak and Kamienka, keeping the forces associated with the immediate defense of the city itself on alert. Also, according to them, the enemy managed to squeeze our guys out of the quarry near Vodyane. This quarry had no tactical value, because from its only the southern already occupied section of the front can be seen. In the situation it has been in recent months, it is generally surprising how it was possible to hold it. In the context of a defense operation, there will be no escape to return the quarry correct. The enemy also continues to press towards Severne and Tonenke, but the attacks are repelled. The Russians are concentrating forces for a new attack, choosing between the northern and southern fronts, writes Deep State. Obviously, the enemy command is conducting a tactical regrouping of forces and assets in units and formation operating in the direction of its main efforts. I think it will not last longer than a day, so in the near future the enemy will resume massive attacks and assault operations in several directions and areas. The enemy will probably try to break through to the area of the coke plant and also towards Stepove and Berdichi. The enemy pulled at least 2 units to their forward position in the West Hip area. My friends, the robot will continue.
Now the enemy command regarding the northern front will have to solve a certain problem. The fact is that it will be difficult for him to advance further on a relatively wide front both on Stepove and the coke plant. This will require the constant introduction of fresh forces into the battle. At the same time, it is obvious that if the enemy takes control of the coke plant, the urgent need for him to break through to Berdichi and Stepove will simply disappear. Indeed, in this case, the task of reaching the Avdiivka area, that is, actually to the rear of the entire Avdiivka defense region, will be possible to complete along the shortest route, using fewer forces than would be the case in the case of a bypass breakthrough through Stepove and Berdichi. However, attacking and assault operations in a zone of continuous industrial development are still pleasure. Remember how the Azovstal metallurgical plant in Mariupol held out, and you will understand all the delights for the attacking enemy troops in the event of their attempt to attack the Avdiivka coke and chemical plant itself. In this sense, the conditions in Mariupol cannot even be compared with those in Avdiivka. There the enemy practically isolated our units and kept them surrounded, attacking almost continuously and having the opportunity to choose directions and areas for their attacks and assaults at their own discretion. While simultaneously unhinderedly equalizing the territory, the plant was turned into rubble by aviation and artillery. In the Avdiivka area, the enemy is deprived of all these bonuses. At the moment, he can only break through to the plant in one direction, well known to the Ukrainian command, from the side of the height with Mark 230. His aviation and artillery are forced to reckon with the air defense operating in this area and counterbattery capabilities of the Ukrainian army. And the continuity of attacking and assault actions, in this case, is more a minus than a plus for the enemy. So, to fall out immediately and quickly onto the rear of the entire Avdiivka region of defense of the armed forces of Ukraine through the Avdiivka coke and chemical plant is, well, very attractive for the enemy. However, obviously, going everywhere on his territory will cost him clearly expensively, if not prohibitively expensive. Meanwhile, military expert for the German newspaper Bild Rock believes that the situation in Avdiivka is serious and the city is under threat of encirclement. Earlier, he reported that Russian troops reached the railway line in the north of the city and approached the village of Yevhenii in the south. As a result, the width of the corridor through which the Ukrainian Armed Forces group in Avdiivka can be supplied has been reduced from 9 to 7 kilometers. The only way to the territories controlled by Ukraine remain through the village of Avdiivka. Rock also commented on video footage from near Avdiivka, which proves the colossal losses of the Russians. One of the photographs shows the bodies of more than 30 Russian soldiers collected near the road, who were prepared for transportation to their homeland. For obvious reasons, I cannot show these footage on YouTube. According to Rock, about 200 Russian soldiers die every day in the battles for Avdiivka. During the 3 weeks of the assault, losses already amounted to 2,000 to 3,000 people. Another photo shows at least 14 destroyed Russian armored vehicles in a small area. The losses of the Russians near Avdiivka are colossal. These shots are similar to those taken during the battle for Bakhmut. Russia captured Bakhmut after 11 months of heavy fighting, losing 20,000 people, says Rock. He notes that, despite the huge losses, the Russians do not abandon the assault on Avdiivka. If the Russians actually managed to take the city, it would mean the end of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, Rock said. Another Western expert, British military analyst Michael Clark, believes that Avdiivka is becoming a second Bakhmut for Ukraine. But, unlike Bakhmut, Avdiivka has real strategic value. It is located on the key route to Donetsk. In his opinion, the last 3 weeks have been a good time for Russia in Ukraine. At the same time, Clark, like Rock, writes about high Russian losses near Avdiivka. Ukrainian military expert Mashevets separately touched on this issue. He believes that the units that are storming the city now were, according to the Russians, intended for such losses and the initial gnawing through the defense of the Ukrainian army. And other troops, which Russia is now concentrating, will break into the depths. Obviously, according to the plan of the Russian command, their task was to initially disorganize the defense system of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Avdiivka direction and achieve some initial, tactical successes, and most importantly, to force the Ukrainian command to react in the manner necessary for the Russians so that it would engage and accordingly spend its operational reserves. And then, according to the plan of the Russian command, other troops will obviously break through into the depths, writes Mashevets. He believes that this is precisely what is connected with the decrease in the intensity of the fighting in the Liman sector of the Kharkiv direction. The Russian forces located there are preparing for an attack on Avdiivka. The scheme here is simple. While the 1st Army Corps entered a clinch with our troops in the Avdiivka direction, exhausting them with constant attacks and assault operations, the Russian command begins to move fresh troops here from another direction. By the time they are operationally deployed, the 1st Army Corps, the Russian Corps, should have achieved initial success, despite losses and a drop in the level of its combat effectiveness, the expert writes. The battalion commander of the Ukrainian army, Kukarchuk, believes that Ukraine is strategically losing the war due to inadequate public perception of the situation. He says that at the beginning of the war, all Ukrainians were ready to defend the country. There were many volunteers. But after the withdrawal of Russian troops from Kiev, the situation changed. Immediately after this, I noticed that theses appeared in the media that we are fighting against the homeless, that the Russian army does not know how to fight, that, in principle, victory will be in a week or two, a month at most. That first in the spring, then in the summer, then in the fall, then in winter, without specifying which winter, we will enter Crimea. That the victory is, in principle, victorious. Thus, people were put into a warm bath. We had a breakdown in the vision of reality. But in Russia it did not happen. They began to understand that the war was not it will be easy for them. They realized that they would have to fight for a long time, says Kukarchuk. He says that the Russians are getting stronger every day, and if Ukraine really fought with the fools, it would have defeated them long ago. That's why we are losing. They have these processes going on. Their society's readiness is much higher than the readiness of our society. And when they talk about a nuclear bomb, a war of all against all, for some reason it seems to me that they are ready for these processes, the battalion commander added.
Friends, please support my channel if you like the video I provide, because making video is my full-time job. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.